This is the regular city council meeting for the city of St. Peter. It is Monday, October 26, 2020. It is 7:00 p.m. This meeting is being conducted in person, which we have 3 members here in person, and we have 4 members that are with us virtually. With that being said, would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will call, if I haven't said it, which I don't think I did, we will again call the meeting to order. First thing up is we have the agenda. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. Once again, under new business, letter A, we are going to strike. Still a couple of little glitches that are being worked through that we thought would be resolved by now, but they are not. So under letter A, under new business, that will be removed. Hopefully to be taken up in a couple of weeks. With that change, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Noel will move.
Ed will second.
Okay, we got Shannon 1 and Ed 2. All in favor of the agenda with that one change, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Oppose? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our October 12th, 2020 special joint City Council Hospital Commission meeting. Those minutes appear on page 6. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Ruffat will second.
Okay, Ed 1, Emily 2. All in favor of those minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next up, we have the minutes from our regular city council meeting of October 12th, 2020. Those minutes appear on pages 7 through 10. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Carrie?
I just noticed in the first paragraph it references an old date, September 14th, 2020, to be changed to October 12th, 2020.
Okay. Does everyone see that? Barb, you got that? I hope you heard that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, those minutes from that meeting with the one change that Carrie pointed out, all in favor of that, those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved with the one change. Next up tonight, we have a public hearing. The first public hearing is for the city code modifications for the gateway regulations. And before I get into that, we'll lay down a couple of the ground rules for the public hearing. The public hearing will appear, or will be undertaken. First, we usually have a staff presentation, which I think Russ is in charge of this one. Then we have an applicant's presentation, and in this case, I think it's just Mr. Baker, if I heard things right. And then last, we will have any other, but that has any public comments. The comments for the section for public comments, we usually try to limit to 5 minutes if possible. We will call that public hearing to order on Monday, October 26, 2020 at 7:05 p.m. And Mr. Willie.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Zeman, members of the City Council. Brad Baker has paid the appropriate fee and has submitted the appropriate application for consideration of a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. Mr. Baker has purchased the property that has been addressed as 967 North 3rd Street. This is a combination of an original lot, and then those who have been in town a while realize that as North 3rd Street would leave Union Street, it used to veer to the right, and now we've made that a right angle. So the second parcel that comprises this lot would be the remnant of the former right-of-way of 3rd Street, which was transferred to Northern Con Ag when they platted the Hallett's Pond subdivision. The property is zoned C4 Highway Service Commercial. It is also subject to the provisions of the Gateway Overlay District, which is the cause for the public hearing tonight. Mr. Baker is planned for the construction of what would be classified in your zoning ordinance as indoor sports and recreation. It would be described as a field house, and the predominant use would be for indoor baseball, batting cages, pitching mounds, etc. It would not have any regular employees, or would be considered to be regular employees, and it would not have any regular hours of operation. Mr. Baker has petitioned then for an amendment to the text within the Gateway Overlay District. As a bit of history, the Gateway Overlay District was adopted nearly 15 years ago when there was a commercial development along Highway 169, which ultimately presented the garbage corral loading dock to the general public as they would come into town on 169. It was also constructed predominantly of a metal facade, and members of the city council at the time had suggested perhaps concerns were raised that was setting the tone for future development, that perhaps that was not the tone that wanted to be set. So the Gateway was originally adopted between Old Minnesota and Highway 169. As the Shopko, which is now Hy-Vee, was developed, the Gateway was then expanded onto the western side of Old Minnesota along the Hallett's Pond property. It was at that time that the property in question was brought into the Gateway District, as there was uncertainty as to how the area would develop. Would it be multiple parcels in concert? Would it be individual parcels? And so the Gateway was expanded. I can't tell you exactly what year that was, but it was subsequent to the original adoption. The intent of the Gateway is intended to promote high-quality development within the Highway 169 corridor. The design features and development standards included in this division are intended to create a memorable and positive first impression upon those entering the city, particularly the motoring public. The district also intends to establish an image and character that is distinctly St. Peter. The principles of the Gateway Overlay District are to be carried out through standards related to site planning, signage, architecture, and landscaping. Developments that have happened subsequent to the adoption of the Gateway Overlay, the two most predominant include the Quick Trip on the south end of town, and then the new Best Western Plus just north of St. Julian Avenue. The section of the code that is petitioned to be amended is Division 15 of Section 24-446, Building Design and Constructions within the Gateway Overlay section. And it reads, all buildings and structures in the Gateway Overlay District shall meet the following building design and construction standards. Subdivision 1, exterior wall finish. All exterior wall finishes on any building structure shall be predominantly constructed of the following materials or a combination of the following materials. As Mr. Baker planned his development, it was determined that to implement the Gateway standards on all four facades of the building would add approximately $28,000 to the cost of construction. That number was generated by Jesse Lager of Lager Construction, who is the contractor who's been working with Mr. Baker. Considering that to be perhaps cost prohibitive or of limited return, Mr. Baker has asked that the code be amended to add a couple words to that section on exterior wall finishes. And the proposal would be that it read as follows. All exterior wall finishes, and now we would add the words exposed to a public street or park, on any building structure shall be predominantly constructed of the following materials or a combination of the following materials. Those materials then include brick, natural stone, precast concrete panels, if it's been treated with a color and has a surface texture, concrete block, again with an exposed surface texture, glass, stucco, some accent framing, and then other materials of a similar quality and durability as approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals and Adjustments. But one of the provisions says that steel, vinyl, or aluminum siding shall be limited to a maximum of 25% of the exposed exterior wall finish. That is the particular clause that causes difficulty for Mr. Baker's project. The Planning Commission considered the proposed amendment at their October meeting, and I will paraphrase, I guess, what I considered to be their thoughts is that the goals and intent of the Gateway overlay can be reasonably accomplished with the exterior finish standards only applied to walls that are visible to a public street or park. Mr. Mayor, a draft copy of the ordinance amending the code as petitioned by Mr. Baker and is recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission is on page 84, and that does carry forward the Planning and Zoning recommendation to the council. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor. If there are no questions, or if you'd rather have Mr. Baker speak at this time, let me know.
All right, does anyone, we'll have an opportunity later, but does anyone have any questions of Russ at this time? We talked about this the other night, I guess, a little bit. Then we will, if not, we will move to Mr. Baker. If you have something to say, first of all, Brad, we need your name and your home address, please.
My name is Brad Baker, and my address is 3328 West 55th Street, Edina, 55410 is my address.
Okay, thank you. Did you have something to add? I'm sorry, maybe I should ask you that first. Did you have anything to add besides what Russ said? Otherwise,
Well, no, not really. I mean, my preference would be for the property to be removed altogether from the Gateway Overlay District, since it can't be seen at all from Highway 169. But, you know, that being said, I really appreciate, you know, the work and respect the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You know, I grew up in St. Peter. You know, I would love to figure out, you know, how to invest in the community. I'm currently the baseball coach at Gustavus. And I think there's a real need for what we're doing, and I'd be excited to, you know, to figure out how to get this project underway, and, you know, just, you know, simply appreciate any help you guys can give me.
okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on behalf of the applicant? All right. Next, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this matter with the Gateway regulations? Once again, we'll be covering this a little bit later, so if council has questions at that time or other things we'd like to raise, we can do it at that time. Todd, did you have anything to add? I saw your hand kind of wave there a little bit.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So we will, if Brad, if you can hang around, we shouldn't be maybe 10, 15 minutes before we get to that point, somewhere in there. If there's no one else, no one's... Go ahead.
Of course, no problem.
Okay. With that being said, we will close the public hearing for the city code modifications for gateway regulations on Monday, October 26, 2020 at 7:13 p.m. Brad, I have an unrelated question. Did you ever own a 1977, 78 MGB?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you ever own a 1977 or 78 MGB?
You know, I think I did. It didn't work very well.
Hey, you sold it to me and it worked even worse after that, so. Anyway.
Well, listen, if you want to talk about the story, it's my 35th wedding anniversary today, so I'm sitting in my office and my wife is just laughing at me. You know, this is the best.
All right. All right. So next on the agenda, we have another public hearing for the North 3rd Street Improvement Project, and we will call to order the public hearing at 7:15 p.m. on Monday, October 26th, 2020. And Pete, are you doing this one, or Jeff?
I'm going to start.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Tonight, Jeff Donross from Bolton and Mink, who prepared the feasibility study of this project and who has done the preliminary outlay of the utilities and the street for this program, will give a small presentation. Jeffrey?
Okay, thank you, Pete. As Pete noted, I'll be discussing the improvements to North 3rd Street from St. Julian to about 100 or 1,000 feet to the north. and then also McLeod Street from North 3rd to the dead end located to the west, and Center Street basically from North 3rd Street to Old Minnesota Avenue. The condition of the roadway along this poor drainage has prompted the City Council to consider the proposed improvement. So those that are in attendance from the public are asking, why am I invited to this improvement hearing? It's because the city is assessing a portion of the improvement cost, proposing to assess a portion of the improvement cost according to their assessment policy. So the improvement hearing provides property owners an opportunity to address the council on the proposed improvements and or assessments. So after the hearing, later in tonight's meeting, the City Council could consider a resolution to order the improvement and preparation of plans. Plans are then prepared and brought back to the City Council for review and approval. If plans are approved, bids will be solicited to perform the work, and then once bids are received, assessments would be updated based on the low bid, and then property owners, benefiting property owners would then be provided an updated assessment amount and invited to a hearing on the proposed assessment, which could be sometime in early March of 2021. So to get into the proposed improvements, right now the existing street on the screen here, I've got a diagram of the proposed improvements along with existing conditions. Currently, North 3rd Street is anywhere between 20 and 24 feet wide. A combination of gravel and fog seals, prone to potholes developing, especially in the springtime and during winter months. Center Street's gravel, it's approximately 20 feet wide. McLeod Street is also gravel, only about 16 feet wide. No curb and gutter or sidewalk are present on any of those roadways. What's proposed is North 3rd Street, proposing to pave that, make that 30 feet wide, add curb and gutter on both sides of the roadway. Also proposing to construct the cul-de-sac, which is platted. I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but that's up in this area on the very north end. Currently, there's no cul-de-sac there, and that is currently proposed because we've got some utility improvements that are proposed in that area. Sidewalk is not proposed along North 3rd Street due to the low volume of traffic. Center Street is proposed to be repurposed for stormwater retention. Two driveways access their homes from Center Street, and so those would continue to be private drives. McLeod Street, proposing to widen that a little bit by paving that and making that 24 feet wide with curb and gutter also. We're not proposing sidewalk either along McLeod Street. Existing sanitary sewer and water main utility work that's proposed as part of the project. Right now, North 3rd Street, there's existing sanitary sewer and water main between St. Julian Street and just a little bit north of McLeod Street. That was installed in the mid-70s and believed to be in good condition. So it's not proposed to replace any of those utilities. However, if we do construct a roadway on the very north end, it is proposed to extend water main and sanitary sewer and then storm sewer to that very north end up there, as you can see in the diagram. Let's see. Storm sewer. As part of that, let me get back to the utilities, I'm sorry. For the sanitary sewer and water main construction that's proposed on the very north end, services would be stubbed to each of those properties on the north end. That would make them developable if the property owner wanted to proceed with developing those. Storm sewer is the last utility improvement that we're looking at. That's a large part of the project. Currently, there isn't any storm sewer in place out there other than some catch basins, which are drainage inlets that take storm water near St. Julian Street and 3rd. Otherwise, there is no storm sewer anywhere else on the project, so it does make it very wet. Drainage is generally from west to east, and there's a lot of runoff from the Lumacraft site, so it really gets messy down there during wet times. So the proposed storm sewer improvements include those that are shown in orange on the map. We got some new catch basins that be installed down at near St. Julian Street. Some additional storm sewer catch basins installed near Center Street, and also near McLeod Street, and then also on the very north end in the cul-de-sac, because we believe that'll need some storm sewer up there. The city's assessment policy is based on 30% of street improvement costs, which are your pavement, your aggregate base, turf restoration, that sort of thing, are assessed based on frontage. So 30% of that cost would be assessed, remaining 70% would be the responsibility of the city. 100% of curb and gutter costs are assessed based on frontage. City pays for intersections and alleys. And then 100% of concrete driveway apron costs are assessed to the benefiting property based on size. For example, if there was an alley here that had an apron, the city would be responsible for that also. Sanitary sewer and water main, those are also assessed at 100%. The services, any new services to lots are also assessed at 100% to those individual lots. Storm sewer is assessed at 100%, and it's based on a contributing drainage area. City pays intersections because that is basically city-owned right away, and there are no abutting properties there. So the estimated costs of the improvements, streets, the total estimated cost of about $248,000. The driveway and curb and gutter are about $70,000. Well, driveway aprons and curb and gutter are about $70,000 each. Sanitary sewer main line and services are about $24,000. Water main and services about $36,000. Storm sewer, as I mentioned earlier, is about $207,000. That's a larger part of the project. Overall, the total cost of the improvements are $652,000 estimated. That includes construction, engineering, city admin, financing, and there's also contingency included in that. City will be responsible for about $226,000, remaining $426,000 or so. We're looking at assessing. The improvements are necessary, cost-effective, and feasible from an engineering standpoint. To give you an idea of the estimated assessment amounts, they vary by property, size of property, and the frontage on property. They can vary from, I think the lowest is about $250 for a property that just has stormwater that drains the storm sewer improvements. And then there's also Alumacraft, who has a large portion of their site, probably 50%, I think it's pretty close to 50% of the overall drainage that's contributing to the storm sewer system. Alumacraft has a large share of that, and their assessment for stormwater is approaching $90,000. We are proposing to stub a pipe out there to Alumacraft so that their water, with some future storm ponding improvements on that site, their water would be directed to that storm sewer pipe and then ultimately underground to a detention pond that's proposed on Center Street. Center Street, with the detention pond that's proposed there, you can see in the figure, we would discharge that to the ditch. That's where everything drains right now. Some minor grading improvements are also proposed along Old Minnesota Avenue to improve that drainage in there and allow that water to flow. So lots along North 3rd Street to south of McLeod, assessments vary anywhere from $7,200 to $18,000. Lots north of McLeod, those are the ones that have, some of them have sanitary sewer and water services that are part of the project, including the cul-de-sac, in the curb and gutter and surface improvements there. They can vary anywhere from $15,000 to $44,000. Estimated assessments were provided to property owners previously, but they're also available here tonight if requested. And I guess with that, I will, unless Pete has anything else to add, I'm open to any questions.
Pete, anything else before we move
No?
on? Okay. we're going to group together the staff presentation and the applicants because we really don't have an applicant. So we will move to the public comment section, and I think we have 2 visitors here with us tonight. And Mr. Wendroth or Carrie, if whoever wants to start, if you want to give us your name and address, your home address, and then tell us what your concerns are.
Okay, James Wendroth. I live at 32516 Mockingbird Hill, St. Peter, Minnesota. I've got property on the end where that cul-de-sac is, and I have no intentions of doing anything with it as far as water, sewer, or street, or not. I don't need any of that stuff. But I did have a question on the proposed, that the water comes to the center of the cul-de-sac and then turns and goes directly west. Why doesn't that run right to the back of the cul-de-sac on a property line? And the next thing is, we don't know what's all gonna go in out there. If and when it does, why can't we run a B curb in the cul-de-sac like they did in Cubs Court? But I just wanted to make a few comments and go on record as saying that I'm not in favor of the project.
Okay.
As far as
Okay.
I've got no cost on it other than one that was proposed a year ago.
Jeff, and do you have an answer for it? Did you hear Mr. Wendroth's question?
Yes, I believe I did. Good questions. The water that Mr. Wendroth is speaking about, we're showing it pictorially there on the west side. In reality, I mean, if we went ahead with final design, we would look at that and see it might be more beneficial to put it on the very north end at the end of the cul-de-sac, as Mr. Wendroth suggested. That's typically like where we like to put them, but for the diagram that we have, it just got a little bit busy in that location, so we just pushed it off to the side for the time being. When it comes to, I think the other question was regarding curb and gutter, the B-style curb or the drive-over style curb and gutter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I know the city standard, we've been, as a standard, we've been using the B6 style curb for many years. I can understand the drive-over style curb if somebody did develop those, or if Mr. Wendroth ever wanted to develop those, that having a drive-over style curb there versus a B-style curb. A B-style curb is about 6 inches high, so it requires the contractors to cut the curb out for their driveway and then install a new section of drive-over curb in there. So it does add a little bit more cost to the construction, but we're basing it on the city standard of going with the B6 18 style curb. I know that many cities have gone to drive-over style curb or consider the drive-over style curb. That's something the city council can ultimately choose to change if they wanted to at some point in the future.
Okay. Jeff, the clarification on the drainage there, you said for now we're moving it to the side instead of to the north. Is that what I understand?
For the water main,
No, what
We're showing-
what Mr. Wendroth's first question was. Maybe I misunderstood his question. The first question you answered, I wanted some clarification on that.
oh, okay, I believe Mr. Wendroth was wondering about where I've got my hand here on the screen. This hydrant here, we're showing it stubbed out to the west. As noting, it might be better that it be pushed back here on the very north end of the cul-de-sac. But for pictorial purposes, just to show everything in there and make it clear, because everything would get pretty busy right here. We just showed it off to the one side, but that's ultimately something that we would determine the best location during design, and we would, keep it out of driveways, that sort of thing. Typically, we like to put them on property lines.
Oh, but that isn't going to change the estimate in any way. Am I understanding that? It's just where it gets routed to at some point in time, but as far as cost-wise, that's not changing anything?
This is a concept right now, Mayor.
Okay.
What you're showing on the screen, it's not, not final. For instance, I mean, this the water main with the hydrant there, if I'm understanding the question correctly, that could be placed pretty much anywhere around that cul-de-sac.
But my question was, it's still going to cost basically the same, correct?
Oh, yeah, the cost is essentially the same. There's a very minimal, if any, difference.
Okay, okay. Jim, did you have any other questions or anything you
No,
want?
that's about all the questions I have.
Okay, all right. Gary, did you have?
Yes.
Okay,
My name is Carrie Leonard, and I live at 1420 North 3rd Street. It's the last house on the left there right before the cul-de-sac. Mr. Domross had stated that there had been no improvements back this way since the 1970s, but I just want to correct him and say that in 2014, I paid $18,000 to hook up to city water. I had a well prior to that, and I had to be assessed $11,400 for that project, and I'm still paying that until 2028. And my new proposed assessment is $51,996. So I'm 70,000 deep into assessments, and I'm not gaining any value to my home. And I think that's unconstitutional. And I'm not sure, I haven't received the new estimate, but I'm wondering if the math was wrong somewhere, or why is this so expensive?
Jeff, do you want to handle that? I can tell Carrie about the other aspect of it as far as its how the assessment thing works. But if you want to try to answer the first one or the question about the costs.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. The assessment for Miss Leonard's lot is about $44,000 right now. That includes, everything that she had talked about. It's primarily that large because of its large frontage. You can see it is one of the larger lots, almost 2, maybe 3 times the size of some of the other homes in there. I know we did consider the water and sanitary sewer service. I believe it was the water service to that property, and I believe the city was bearing the cost of that water service to the home, and crediting her for that portion of it. So I guess that doesn't take care of that assessment that was previously assessed towards the property, but I know it's not doubling up on it, I guess.
It is doubling up on it? It's not doubling up on it, so they are.
It's not doubling up, no.
Okay, all right, so she is accurate with the latest estimates that she has then, correct? What you have for your water and.
Well, he's saying 44,000
Right,
now.
right. Plus the other one that you already have.
I already have one,
Right,
yes.
right. Jim, maybe you can answer the question as far as, or I can do it too, I guess, as far as the legal ramifications. I know that I ran into this same type of situation over in Nicollet here a few years ago, and basically, I believe it's statute 1297, don't quote me on that.
It's
but you can,
429051.
is that what it is now?
Yep.
Whatever it was when I had it, went through it. But it says basically, your value of your property, it can go up, but basically we have to prove, like you say, that's the way I understand the law. We have to prove that it's worth that extra.
Exactly.
And I know I went through this personally over in Nicollet at a property that you have over there. So Jim, I don't know if you have anything to.
That's basically it. If you're
Jim, I think you might need a microphone or something. Bear with us, we're getting the city attorney a microphone.
Muted.
Yeah, it's basically if you have a house that starts at $100,000 and you got a $40,000 assessment on it, after it's done, the house should be worth $140,000.
Right, and that, there are avenues you can pursue. I know that But I guess I'm not going to tell you one way or another, that what you should do, because I don't know, as far as that is concerned. But there are definitely avenues to pursue that, and that you're absolutely right.
Unmuted.
Whatever that was. Did you guys have any other questions? We'll take this up. Like I say, we're still working through this, but we're getting there. But like I say, there are some things that you have other avenues you can pursue with it. It's not always cheap, but both of you together, I know you're related, so you might be able to work out something that way. I'm not trying to discourage us from moving forward, but I do think that people need to know that there are other things they can do. We just can't, the legislature told us that quite a few years ago. We just can't do this without some justification for it afterward. So, all right, Jim, did I really goof up?
No, you basically stated right. There are appeal rights that you have from a special assessment, and that's the goal, is that the special assessment should increase the value of your property.
All right. So, did the two of you have any other questions or points you wanted to make at this point? Okay. Thank you both for coming in. We really do appreciate it. We'd like to hear from people and hear what they're thinking on this situation. We will be taking discussion on this later as it comes up, but and I'll leave it up to you two if you want to stick around. If you're not, we're always on TV every once in a while too. So, otherwise, if not, if there aren't any other comments at this time, we will close the public hearing for the North 3rd Street Improvement Project at 7:36 p.m. on Monday, October 26, 2020. Next up, we have visitors. We'll address, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 12 and concludes with the resolution on page 25, and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000 to SEMA equipment for a John Deere 2020 Z970R Z-Track mower. It's not $10,000, but it's a trade-in, so it's valued at more than $10,000, so that's why it's here. So after the trade-in value, it's for $8,814.93. The following employee appointment: Dean Heimerman for part-time bus driver at $16.72 per hour. There are also 20 metal voting booths that the city is no longer in need of and is declared as surplus, plus the regular schedule of disbursements for October 8th, 2020 through October 21, 2020. Are there any questions, comments on the consent agenda? Brad.
Todd and I, we had this discussion earlier, just on the voting booths. I'm in favor of it. As I indicated earlier, I wish you might have held off for just 2 weeks from a timing perspective, just from an optics perspective. But can you just confirm that these voting booths weren't used and have already been replaced? That essentially that they're not actually, essentially you don't feel they're actually even safe to use?
That is correct. We do not believe that they are safe to use, and they have not been used in the last 2 election cycles. And so we changed to a different system that we believe has a couple advantages. First of all, they're more handicap friendly. Second of all, they're much easier to clean. And so those are 2 of the criteria that are important to us. And it is true, these are not safe. They are so wobbly. They are not safe. They weren't used for a long time, but have not been used for the last 2 election cycles.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, it was understood that we aren't taking anything out of circulation that has been used. So that's all I had to say, so thanks.
Right. Anybody else have anything else they have questions on or comments? All right. Resolution appears on page 25 for approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Emily will second.
Carrie 1, Emily 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which we have none. We will move to new business. Letter A, we have removed, so we will go to letter B, which is the city code modification request for the gateway regulations. And Russ, I guess we're back to you to start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Zeman, members of the city council. I won't intend to recreate my report that I did at the public hearing, but I would certainly make myself available to any questions that the mayor or council may have.
Okay, Carrie?
Thanks, Russ. I have a question. As I've been driving by, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. As I've driven by the Anytime Fitness property, and I know that well, does Anytime Fitness apply to the Gateway District? It doesn't, does it?
No, the Anytime Fitness, the property north of Dodd Avenue or Highway 22 was not included when the council expanded the district.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I've been watching the construction. It's close to my house, and on the...
I'm sorry, now I'm losing you, Councilwoman.
Can you hear me?
Barely, but maybe someone could interpret or repeat it.
Okay, I'll state my question and then maybe Mr. Mayor can repeat it. But Anytime Fitness has been constructed, and on there's two sides of the exterior that don't appear to have stone, but it looks like it's a nice finish. Do you know what the exterior of that building is on the sides, not the frontage?
I don't recall, Councilwoman.
Okay.
Again, it wasn't in the district, so I didn't do that thorough of a review. I do a zoning review with any building permit for setbacks and such, and when it's in the gateway, I apply the gateway. But in this instance, I'm not sure. I can say that Mr. Gensel's plans were thoroughly vetted by Anytime Fitness to meet standards that they would have as a corporation.
Yeah, I'm just bringing this up because I want to make the comment that although there's not stone on the sides, it looks very nice. So I just wanted to make that point and to also ask if you knew what that exterior finish is on the sides.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't, but again, I would expect that it would meet the standards of Anytime Fitness corporate organization.
I think that's what we find with a lot of the potential businesses, buildings that are being built out there, such as a Hy-Vee, a Quick Trip, maybe a McDonald's. They have all their specifications that are well within our gateway parameters. So we're gonna see probably more extensive buildings, as far as appearance. So, but I mean it's still. I drove by there today. It does look nice. I have a couple questions. One was something that came up the last time we talked about this, and I don't know if Mr. Brandt, if you've had a chance to. We had a kind of a time limit here because to get back to Mr. Baker on our response.
I think the time limit is 60-day rules is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I've found a case which basically says it does not apply to zoning ordinance changes. It would apply to things like permits, conditional use permits, building permits, development agreements changes. But when it comes to actual ordinance, it appears like that's not an issue. I believe in any case, the 60-day rule would end the 9th of November, if I'm not mistaken.
So we would have a council meeting on the 8th, I believe. Would we not?
Chuck, could you please repeat what Jim said?
Jim said that I asked him about the 60-day rule, and he said what he has found, there's a case, what he has found is that it applies to like a permit situation, but when we're changing a city ordinance, then it does not, in this case, it did not apply. So I think that's basically what Jim said.
That's correct.
Yeah,
It's
so-
it's a legislative act that would
Yeah.
give the council more time.
Yeah. I'm going to address a question to Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker, is time, I know time is always of the essence, but what is your time frame? I know I heard you wanted to get started yet this fall, but I don't know if that's the case still? We might have lost him. Brad, are you there?
He may need a reminder to turn on his mic.
We need your mic on, Mr. Baker. All right. Well, I've got a...
Well, Mr. Mayor, perhaps I can answer that question. I had talked to Mr. Baker, assuming at the time that the 60-day rule applied, and we asked the city attorney to look into the matter to determine if it applies to conditional uses and variance, or does it actually apply then to a code amendment. So I'm glad that he's made that decision. But I had talked to Mr. Baker. He was willing to forego construction until the spring, with the thought that the city council then would come to a resolution, perhaps that would be in his favor. If not, I don't know what his response would be. But Mr. Baker is fully aware that there's economic development authority funding available, but it was his intent not to seek any public financing for the project.
Right. And that's what's a question.
Mr. Mayor, members, I think it's also important to note that even if there was a 60-day time frame put in place, that 60-day time frame is after your next council meeting. So if you do take action to table, certainly you may have time to have this reviewed by the council, but based on Jim's opinion, it is certainly something that you could move to planning and zoning to review again. And certainly we'd want to continue to communicate as often as we could with Mr. Baker to make him aware of what action is going on.
Maybe you couldn't hear Jim. He had said that he thought the 60 days ran out on November 9th, and our next meeting, council meeting, is November 8th. No, that's not right either. No, it's not. No.
9th is our next council.
Number 9th, okay. All right. So we have some options but we want to move this along as best as we can. Russ, earlier you mentioned a couple of properties that more recent in the gateway, and I think you mentioned Quick Trip and forgot what the other one was on the other end.
Best Western Plus.
That's what. Thank you. What about, and I think one of these is maybe in between those two, what about the strip mall where the Dunkin' Donuts is in?
Yeah, that as well as I believe the KFC on the north end of town. The Papa Murphy's, I believe, was developed just before the gateway, but they agreed to abide by the regulations to the greatest extent.
The question I have, I drove by and around the strip, the one on the east side with the Dunkin' Donuts and the bank and phone company in it. Does concrete board siding qualify as a material to be used?
Yeah, the direction I received from the council was to interpret the ordinance to the benefit of the applicant to the greatest extent possible. And since it wasn't specifically noted as steel, metal, or aluminum, it was determined that that type of hardy board or other type of insulation products would be acceptable. The product that Mr. Baker had proposed to meet the gateway standards was actually a metal panel that's an insulated panel, and it would have a stucco finish.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just so in future, I know that people refer to, Hardy is actually a brand. So it, for the siding. Because that one there, that little strip mall has, I don't know, 3/4 of that is concrete board siding. So, to me that works fine, it looks fine, but if I were to look at this and drive by and it says no siding, it kind of looks like only 25% of it is really stone or, that kind of fascia on it. So I think, once again, I think there's some flexibility in there. Can you tell me a little bit more, or tell all of us about this stucco material you were just talking about?
Yeah, the appearance would be similar to the north facade that was redone at the Ameriprise on the south end of parking lot number 5. It would essentially have a stucco appearance. I would defy most folks from being a couple steps away from saying that it's a metal product and not a actual stucco product, if you will.
So I'm trying to get this moving forward, but, so that's the material that he's proposing to use before we even said, hey, you gotta have 75% of this? Or that's the material?
That was to meet the gateway. I would suggest that perhaps it would be more what might be described as a Morton-type building.
Okay. All right.
But again, it would have a metal panel. It wouldn't necessarily be that typical siding you might find on a residential structure, but it would be a metal panel that would look more like a wall finish rather than a siding finish.
Right, but that's the part that he is proposing to use on the two sides.
He was proposing to use that on 2. The ordinance would require that he have that on all 4.
Right.
Which would be the $28,000. So on 2 sides, just to make the math easy, I'm going to cut that in half.
Okay. I didn't know if this was something that was in the original and then where we were asking for more, or if this was all right to be used under what you have told him or what the ordinance says.
Yeah, this is what Mr. Logger, the contractor, proposed that I would determine would meet the intent of the ordinance.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? I've kind of dominated here. Emily?
Thank you. Russ, could you talk a little bit more about what the planning and zoning discussed as far as the idea of having 2 tiers of regulations? That kind of interests me, and leaving the gateway overlay the way it is and having maybe a lower tier for this area. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, at the Planning Commission, there were a number of issues discussed. One actually being that the Baker property could be reasonably removed from the gateway with little impact, being that it would be facing North 3rd Street. The other thought proposed would be that perhaps 2 tiers of a gateway would be appropriate. One would again apply to the original gateway between Old Minnesota Avenue and Highway 169 that would require the enhanced facade on all 4 sides. And then perhaps the properties on the west side of Old Minnesota, including Mr. Baker's property, would only be restricted perhaps as little to just the facade that's facing the public street or park.
Thank you, Russ. I personally like that idea. I think that would make a lot of sense, and it sounds like what he's already planning is still going to look acceptable. It's not going to look like an eyesore or anything like that, so I don't have a concern there.
Yeah, actually, the building would have a coarse foot of brick on the lower level. I believe it was 32 inches, and then it would have that metal wall panel, insulated panel that would have the stucco finish.
But that's just on the 2 sides then, right?
That's what Mr. Baker's requested. As the ordinance stands now, he would have to do that on all 4 facades.
Right. I understand that. The other 2 sides that we would not, or if he's only doing 2, they would be a corrugated metal finish?
Yeah, it's a metal insulated panel, Mayor. It's kind of a newer construction method, but the exterior finish would be a stucco.
Okay. So now you really confused me. So the 2 sides are going to meet what was proposed here, that instead of all 4, but the 2 sides that are left over after he complies with the original 2 sides that we're talking about, they're going to be what finish? What will we see?
I have not seen a plan
Okay.
for a building that would abide by the amended ordinance. I've only seen one that had the enhanced finish on all four sides.
Okay.
So I don't know what Mr. Baker would choose then to
Okay.
finish the two sides that wouldn't be required in the ordinance.
Okay. Do you know which side, or maybe it's on both sides, which side parking is planned?
Pardon me?
Do you know which side parking is planned?
This parking would be on the west side of the building along 3rd Street,
West side.
with the parking lot accessed off of 3rd to line up with the driveway of Ties Automotive in that area.
Okay. So there's just parking, and that's 60 feet wide? That's all the parking there is?
He would be required to have 9 parking stalls
Okay.
in total.
Okay, all right. Okay. Questions? I think, Brad, did you have your hand up? Somebody had their hand up before.
Yeah, I was just gonna note, one of the things we ran into at the planning and zoning meeting, which I think kind of pushed the amendment out, was the fact that we ran into a time crunch at the end, as far as we were about to lose our go-to meeting time. So we were having a robust discussion, but I know Shannon and I both voted against it. My main concern with the amendment was the fact that it was impacting the entire district, and I felt that the properties east of Old Minnesota shouldn't be changed. It was that two-tiered idea that Emily was discussing, but I thought it was worth consideration to look at whether any adjustments may be suited or in place for properties that would be west of Old Minnesota. I think since Mr. Baker indicated he has flexibility on time, that this might be an issue worth tabling and sending back to planning and zoning, just so that that commission could have a little bit longer, more robust discussion on it. But as the amendment stands, as written, I would be opposed to it for the fact of amending the properties east of Old Minnesota. I don't think we should go that route. So.
Okay. I kind of agree with you there, Brad, as far as I think we need to take another look at this. When I initially, a couple of weeks ago, whatever, when we talked about this, I thought, let's leave them all the same, but the more I drive down there and look at there, I think maybe we should change something on that 3rd Street side. And I was just looking, there's some really good-looking metal, corrugated, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I grew up on a farm. It's not corrugated anymore. Maybe that's what they call it, but it's not that. But I was thinking that to flip it, that what we have in the gateway now is 75% of the building needs to be in these materials. I was thinking in the area, if we take this back to planning and zoning, the area where this is located and along there, that it should be the other way around, that 25% of it maybe should be in this. And then I was looking at, you can find some pretty attractive buildings that have a 4 to 6 foot high brick veneer that goes all the way around the building. And that would qualify under this type of situation, and the rest of it on up from there would be this metal structure. Because I think there is a difference on those properties down there.
I have a similar feeling, so.
Any other questions before I ask if, unless somebody makes a motion to table? Carrie?
Yeah, I guess my follow-up comment after hearing the discussion is, the point I was trying to make with Anytime Fitness is, it appears that, since 2006, I believe it was 2006, when the council discussed this, building materials have advanced and can be much more attractive looking. And so I just wanted to make that comment as a follow-up to what I said earlier. That was the point I was trying to make, and I think goes along with what the mayor is saying about looking at that area in a different way.
Any other comments? Questions?
Steve's got his.
Steve?
I just got a question relative to the overlay district. Are
what was the original intent? Was it to make the areas that the driving public coming in on 169 would see, or was it to enhance the view of the buildings for all citizens, both those driving through and also the citizens of our community?
Mr. Mayor, you want me to handle that
I
one?
was going to say, go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, I read the intent of the ordinance, but at the time that commercial building, and we don't need to drag their name into it, but with the garbage corral and with the loading dock oriented towards 169, one of the former councilmen said that they didn't want the experience to resemble that as driving down an alley. And so, and we had some of the gateway, what I call bad gateway pictures in your council packet Monday night, of strip malls with the back end and one bare utility meter and one bare light above a bare door does not necessarily create a favorable impression. So at that time, expecting that there would be pending development, as there has been moderate pending development, and at the time that building was developed, it was perhaps one of the first commercial development in a number of years on the highway corridor. So it did raise some alarms, and that was the impetus of the ordinance, Mr. Grams.
That answer your question, Steve?
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Oh, yep, that does. I'm just curious, if we make this a two-tier system, if that's what the wishes of the council is, then how does that affect the south end of St. Peter?
If it's within the Gateway District, Councilman, it would apply, pardon me, Mayor, I jumped in, I
That's
didn't
all right,
ask your
nope.
permission, but it would apply to all of the Gateway Districts, Councilman Grams, both North End and South End. And perhaps you would consider a tier 2 on the south end as well. I can't imagine that would be right now, just off the top of my head, but if you're going to have a 2-tier Gateway District, perhaps it would be applicable to the south end reasonably.
Okay. Todd, you looks like you've been itching to say
Okay,
something.
thank you.
Todd, do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Mayor, if the council's intent, though, is to table, we would certainly want clarification as to whether you want to table it to send it back to planning and zoning, or whether it's just something we want to have within the purview of the city council.
Okay. Before we answer that, Shannon, go ahead. You had a question.
I talked a lot last time we talked about it, so I thought I wouldn't talk too much tonight. You know, I voted against the change. I do prefer the original language, and I would favor either a removing this particular property from the Gateway District or a 2-tier system. Either one would be something that I'd like to explore further. So.
Okay. All right. With Todd's comment, I would think we would want to send this back for review, back to planning and zoning, where, we get 7 other people, well, not 7, but 5 other people, and Brad and Shannon discussing this maybe a little bit more in depth. I think, we're kind of spread out here, and I think they need to put their input on this too. So with that being said, is there anyone that has any more comments? If no one has any more comments, I do have a resolution, or no, excuse me, I do have an ordinance. Do we want to, I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, but is there anybody that would like to table this, make a motion to table? Emily?
Emily will make a motion to table this and send it back to the Planning and Zoning Committee for further discussion.
Okay. Anyone
Ed will
else?
second.
Emily made a motion to table and send back to Planning and Zoning for further discussion. Ed seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we will table that issue. Thanks for the discussion. Next up, we have the North 3rd Street improvement, project improvement order. And we're going to go back to Pete.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you see, the resolution on page 86 does a couple things for us. It identifies that we completed the 10 days mail notice and the 2 weeks published notice, that we are evaluating the improvement as necessary, cost-effective, and feasible, and that the improvements are hereby ordered by the City Council, and that Bolton and Mink would be the designated engineer for the improvements. Following this resolution, we'll see plans and specification identification for that process. This is necessary as part of the Minnesota Statutes 429 process, and this resolution does require a 4/5 vote of the City Council in order to pass. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Go ahead, Ed.
Pete, what percentage are we at of people that agree and people that disagree with the new road?
I do not have that with me, but it's similar to the numbers that I provided at the workshop. I don't have the exact numbers right now. There still are a handful of people that have not signed waivers. Majority of the people have, including your industry to the west there. I'm sorry, let me state that over. They have given us a verbal commitment, and they have agreed to work with an engineer to design their storm sewer.
If recollection, I thought you said there was 5 before the last time that had not, or was that 5 properties? Do you remember, Pete?
Please say that again, Mr. Mayor. You were breaking up just a little bit for us.
The last time, Pete, I think if my recollection is right, you said there was 5 that had not signed the waiver. And I can't remember if that was 5 people or 5 properties. Do you remember that?
I believe there's, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's 7 that have not signed. 2 of them agree with the project, just not really interested in paying for it. And then the remaining have signed waivers.
Okay, so of the 7, how many parcels, how many properties does that represent? Because Mr. Wendroth, I think, owns more than one, does he not?
He only owns 1 property at this time.
Okay. I thought he owned a couple of them down there yet. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members, I think it's important to note here too that although this does say ordering the improvement is not put into place until after you have bid and accepted bids. So at the time that bids are taken, your staff will review and a revised analysis of the assessments will be put in play. At that time, the council can either accept or reject the project, and then you go from there. So this doesn't mean that bids are accepted. You still have to go through a bidding and acceptance process as a part of this overall 429 process.
Okay. Any other questions? Steve?
Pete, when Jeff was talking, he mentioned that was it storm sewer or the sanitary system? The pipes were what, 40 years old? What's the life expectancy of those pipes, and what's the material that they're made out of?
The sewer line is clay tile. That has been installed since the early 70s, along with the water main, which is cast iron. And so they should last as long as the existing street surface that would be put in, which is roughly 25 to 30 years.
Okay.
So you're pretty confident that those pipes they have maintained their integrity?
Yeah, well, we've seen of them when we've exposed them. They're in pretty decent shape.
And then the final question I have, Jeff was talking about on the north end stubbing the lines. What does that mean? And if the individual that owns that property on the cul-de-sac, if they want to sell it and then have houses developed, does that mean they have to tear the cul-de-sac street up again to get exposed to those stubbed lines?
Yeah, the stubbings would go to the property line, so what you saw on the cul-de-sac line there, the utilities would be installed about 10 to 15 feet into the private, into the grassy areas where the property line actually meets the right-of-way and the boulevard. And so the goal would be is that homes that are built in that area then would have a service to connect to without water and sewer being stubbed into the property. Those are unbuildable lots.
Okay, that's helped me. Thank you, Pete. Thanks, Jeff.
Anyone else have any questions? Carrie?
Hi, a resident had emailed me and maybe a couple other council members to ask a question. They were unable to be at the hearing. They live at 815 North 3rd Street. They have a cement slab that they received a permit for 11 years ago, and they said that they were told that they would be unable to keep that cement slab with this project. And so I wanted to get some clarification on that, and if you had talked to them.
I don't,
That's wrong, Earl.
yeah, I don't think they're part of this project, are they?
No.
This is.
No, they're on our other North 3rd Street project, and we are working out details with them, Terry, to make things work there.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, this is right behind El Agave. They live.
So they may have been confused about this public hearing. They referenced
Yeah,
the
we've got
public
a
hearing
couple-
tonight.
Right, we've got a couple different projects going on here, so they're both named North 3rd Street right now, and theirs is just the other project that we'll be doing next summer.
All right, well, their confusion is my confusion. Thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to make a couple comments about this project. It was helpful to hear from Carrie and Jim tonight. Having driven by that property a number of times, having received other emails from other residents, you know, I really do think about, you know, especially the residents that are having the water issues, the state of the street, and then, you know, on the cul-de-sac on the northeastern side, you know, the development of those lots in that area and being unable to develop numerous lots. So while I understand the concerns of Carrie and Jim, you know, I do feel like this is a project that is needed very badly, and I'm in favor of moving the project forward.
And if you went out there recently, the road out there now is a lot better than it was last year or 2 years ago, or even prior to that. It actually, it seems like it's in pretty good shape, but yeah, it's a mess usually, most of the time.
Yeah, and I lost my train of thought. Well, we can come back to me.
All right.
That's okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, it came back.
Yep.
It came back.
It just came back to Carrie. Here we go.
Well, I also wanted to say, you know, there's been a number of times where the city has worked on this project, 1977, I think the other time was 1995, and, you know, this hasn't been fully dealt with, and so I would hate to push this problem down the road for future councils to have to deal with, and so I wanted to make a comment, you know, this seems like a good time to do it, versus it being more expensive to take on in the future for everybody involved.
Okay. Steve, did you have your hand up again?
I've kind of figured out that this is strictly the bidding process from Bolton and Mink, but I didn't really hear what you were saying, Mr. Mayor, relative to the concerns about the value of the houses increasing compared to what it was costing them. And when we get to the point that we finally decide whether we move forward or not, I cannot say at this point that I'm in favor of it or against it, because there are people that are sitting there that may not want to pay for this. So does that mean it falls back to the city? And what's that process? And I guess we'll get to that point when that occurs. So I wonder if you could repeat what you were saying before, Mr. Mayor, regarding the issues that you were discussing.
Okay, I'm sorry you didn't.
The cost and the value.
I'm sorry you didn't hear before. I thought I was shouting, actually. But anyway, when you have an assessment process like this where the city improves a property from the city aspect of it, we have to prove, it's the burden of the city to prove that if they have a $50,000 increase in assessments, that the value of their property has increased at least by that $50,000. Otherwise, they have legal rights to get judgment, however it works. I'm not sure after that point, but that's how the situation reads. Jim, how did I screw that one up?
No, you did a good job. I think at the end of the day, they would appeal their assessment and the court will make a decision if the assessment, like you said, was worth the value. So taking an example of a $100,000 house and a $40,000 assessment, if after that was done, the court said, well, the house now is worth $120,000, the city basically is going to be on the hook for that extra $20,000.
That answer your question, Steve? Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? The resolution ordering improvement and preparation of plans for North 3rd Street, Center, and McLeod Streets from West St. Julian to 1,000 feet north appears on page 86. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel will move.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Shannon, 1, Carrie, 2. Any other questions or comments at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Rufat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the North 3rd Street project preliminary engineering authorization. And Pete and Jeff again, I would imagine.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following our last action there, we do have a cost estimate from Bolton and Link to complete the design and move forward with this project. We'll prepare plans and specifications in the overall project and receive bids. Bolton and Link will be able to do the design work for $55,700. And I'm available to answer any questions.
All right. Questions for Pete or Jeff? If not, the resolution retaining Bolton and Mank to provide design services for North 3rd Street, Center, and McLeod Street Improvement Project appears on page 90 and 91. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor, Steve Grams.
Ed will second it.
Steve, 1, Ed, 2. Any questions or comments now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Rufat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the 2021-2022 Water Fund budget. Sally?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, we're here tonight to ask for the approval of we'll start with wastewater budget for the 2021-2022 budget. The budgets start on the memo starts on page 92 with all the detail with the resolution ending on page 118. As we discussed at the last workshop on Monday night, we are proposing a 2-year budget, and this is the second time we're asking for a 2-year budget. The operating expense budgets are similar to what the council approved in past budgets. 2021 is down 0.3% from 2020, and 2022 increases 2.5% from 2021. For 2021 and 2022, we're leaving revenues are basically up 3% from 2019 actual, but they're flat to the 2020 budget. Wastewater revenue is based on water gallons and can be very weather dependent. There are no rate increases proposed for 21 or 22. Right now, we do not have any in the 2021 or 2022 budget being flat to 2020. We're not including new construction or new use in the city. So as different businesses and homes are built, we're not factoring that in because, again, it is weather dependent. If it's a very wet summer, a lot of the irrigation and some of the other uses of water are not used. So hopefully the new construction will offset those decreases if that happens. The 2021 capital projects that are planned for 2021 is $491,500, and we are funding those all from reserves, and that is on page 93 of our packet. And the projects are the North Interceptor Phase 5 for $60,000, North 3rd Street north of Julian, there's $18,000. We just talked about some of that project. Miscellaneous engineering, $21,500. AMI meters, $50,000. There will also be, when we talk water, there'll be another $50,000 in the water. Those are the electronic meters put into people's houses, so meter readers, they're automatically read in my office or up at Public Works. And so we don't have the meter readers reading those. The daily usage or hourly usage can be brought down from the computers every day. So you can see, so you can detect a leak pretty easily for the homeowners. It's pretty nice that, you know, after 2 days, they can call and say, you're running 5 gallons an hour, 24/7. You have a leak somewhere in your system, which saves everybody money by looking at that and going in and looking. We also are working on Traverse Green Outlet D for $40,000, demolition of the North Lift Station for $60,000. That's a year one of a 2-year project of getting that torn down and demolished. Equipment replacement for wastewater treatment facility of $40,000. Some lab equipment for $8,000. We have BAF blowers, a total of 8. We replace one a year at $50,000. Main lift pumps of $35,000, and then a John Deere tractor, which is going to be split. It's a total of $12,000 split between 3 of the funds. And then we have some Public Works building maintenance for $5,000, and then $100,000 for the SCADA upgrade. This is our data acquisition computer operated system, and it's 20 years old, so it needs an upgrade. Other things to know. Wastewater does transfer 6.5% of its gross sales to the general fund. This percentage has been in place for a number of years. For 2021 and 2022, we're proposing the 6.5 plus $200,000 transfer to the general fund. And this helps cover wastewater costs in the various city facilities. In 2022, we're also proposing a $1.1 million transfer to the water fund from wastewater. This is the first year of the planned transfer to the water fund, and that has been discussed in previous councils as debt is being relieved from wastewater. It's always been the plan to transfer money and keep water, help pay the water debt by using wastewater transfers. Instead of lowering the wastewater rates and raising water rates, we feel it's easier just to leave everybody flat and transfer between these two funds because they work so closely together. So this is the first of 5 years that we're planning. If future projects or something would happen at wastewater and we need some additional funds, we would address if the 1.1 million would be transferred that year. But you would have that discussion. Current debt issues are listed. As I said, in 2022, some major debt is being $731,000 or 54% will fall off by the end of 2022 of debt. Interest rates on the debt that's issued is anywhere from 1% up to 4%. And as I said, and then in 2023, an additional $513,000 of debt payments will be retired. In 2024, debt payments will be approximately $100,000 a year. Other information, there is a requirement of the debt with PFA. In 2021, we have the last payment of that, so right now there's a restricted balance of $831,825 dollars to be used for future capital needs. Once this debt is paid off, and this is our last year, it is no longer considered restricted. We can use it for however we want to use that. It will be capital improvements, but it isn't restricted just to this area. We did enter a lease for with Amoresco in 2017. Part of it was for wastewater and UV lighting in the water plant. Their portion of the $2,650,000 was $905,043. Payments on that principal on that is $61,000 a year, and the final payment of that is in 2037. We are seeing payment or electric and water costs reduced because of that. So it is reducing costs by $61,000. So we're paying off our lease payment with savings. We do not have a target for this fund for reserves, but we would like to see cash balance of $1.4 million. Changes in rates, and the fund has moved positive since starting in 2015. We want to be, as I said, water and wastewater are so intertwined that we want to be transparent, and that's why we are basically leaving rates flat with wastewater and using the transfers to keep water rates from having to go up. The wastewater fund has a projected fund balance of $1,908,690 at the end of 2021, with a budget of $3,860,420. And then at the end of 2022, fund balance is projected to be at $1,550,018, with a budget of $4,242,173. And we'll continue to analyze cash positions, sales, and expenditures in the future. Again, just because you approve the budget doesn't mean that all the spending happens. Anything over $10,000 will come back to you to be reviewed that is not budgeted. And also, we will come back mid-2021 to give you a recap of how 2021 is progressing against budget, and if we see any changes in 2022 that you're approving tonight when the two-year budget spans. So we are asking you to adopt the 2021-2022 wastewater budget resolution on page 118.
Okay.
Questions?
Questions for Sally? I can't see, but
There's a lot of numbers.
there we go. Now you guys are bigger. Can I, is there any questions? Sally, I have one. Since these budgets are between the wastewater and upcoming the water are pretty close, is there any accounting or legal reason why we just can't combine them now? Todd, do you know, or Jim? I mean, is there anything that restricts us from just, instead of every year going through it, and since we're transferring funds between, can we just combine these two?
My suggestion would be, Mr. Mayor, is that that would not be in the long-term best interest of the council or the city. And that's based on the idea that at some point in the future, there may be a debt issuance that's necessary in one fund or the other. And having them combined could lower your eligibility and impact you working with the state through Public Facilities Authority or other entities of the state of Minnesota, and how they do the calculation about total amount of funds, total amount of reserves, etc.
All right.
Also, I think from an accounting perspective, it isn't a best practice. Really, the best practice is to have these enterprise funds be divided appropriately, and so that continues to be, I think, our recommendation moving forward.
That is a very acceptable answer. I appreciate it. Makes sense. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? We talked about this, Sally covered it last week. If not, the resolution adopting the 2021-2022 wastewater fund budget appears on page 118. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2, any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a resolution adopting the 2021-2022 water fund budget. Sally?
Again, Mr. Mayor and City Council, water budget begins on your packet on page 119 and ends with the resolution on page 149. The operating budget for water is, again, very similar to what was approved for the 2020 budget. 2021 budget is a decrease of 0.75% from 2020, and 2022 is budgeted at a 1.5% increase from 2021. This is the second time we're working on the 2-year budget cycle. These funds are very steady, stable. There's a stable revenue stream. We do have newer facilities for water, and the quality and maintenance program for water and wastewater we have very good quality maintenance systems for that. The fund is mainly impacted by capital projects, and again, water does impact water use. We do come back to you mid-cycle in 2021 to tell you how 2021 is progressing against this budget, and then we'll look at how 2022, if we need to make changes or if we're on course, and we see what's happening there. If assumptions change, we'll talk about it and see where we go from there. Operating budget is similar to what the council approved, and there are no rate increases for the 2 years. Revenues are projected to be flat again to the 2020 budget. Again, revenue is not accounted for any construction growth going forward. We continue to have irrigation meters installed on new construction. The benefit of an irrigation meter is there's no base charge to the customer, and there is a slightly higher cost per 1,000 gallons used, but then you don't have the wastewater side of it. If you don't have an irrigation meter, you get both water and wastewater on your bill. So you'll have a no base charge and a slightly higher 1,000 gallons, but you won't have any of your wastewater charge on that. So it is beneficial if you're going to water your yard a lot or have large gardens to look at that for even existing older construction homes. Again, water does not transfer to the general fund. Wastewater picks up that. Going forward, current debt issues, interest rates range between 0.6% to 4.5%. We have a small debt falling off in 2020, but most of the debt is out in the 2028 and 2029 is the end of that expiring, and they're listed in the packet for you. Capital, again, for 2021 is spent from reserves. That's on page 120 of the budget memo, and that's $293,000 for 2021. We have $75,000 in capital for the St. Julian filter rehabilitation, $25,000 in a water distribution master plan, $55,000 for additional AMI meters, $40,000 for Travers Outlet D, North Julian for $28,500, engineering and professional services of $40,500, annual hydrant replacement of 6. That's 6 hydrants get replaced every year throughout town, $20,000, and general water plant for about $9,000. Again, we come back for purchases over $10,000, so approving budget tonight does not give Pete or his superintendents rein to go out and start spending and not come back to you guys. Not that he does anyway, but we will be back for anything over $10,000. And as we've discussed, the water wastewater funds do have a very close relationship. So wastewater will start transferring $1.1 million into the water reserve starting in 2022 to help cover some of this debt that's out there for water. Again, this helps level your normal customer from having rate increases in water and decreases in wastewater and everything else. Basically, it's holding rates flat for the customer. They basically know what their bill is going forward. So that's what we're working on and keeping everything working side by side. We're asking for you to approve the resolution on page 147, adopting the 2021-2022 water budgets.
Okay. Questions for Sally? Once again, we spoke about this a little,
Monday.
or last week, and covered basically the same stuff what Sally presented now and had questions then. So if not, I don't see anyone. The resolution adopting the 2021-2022 water fund budget appears on page 147. Is there a motion for approval?
Carrie Johnson,
So
so
moved, Mr.
moves.
Graham, Mr. Mayor, this is Steve Graham.
All right, we got Steve 1, Carrie 2. Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. The only thing I have is, this is our last televised meeting before the elections on November 3rd. So if you have not already voted, make sure you go out and vote, and whatever your preference is, but make sure you exercise your rights. Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Mr. Mayor, as you know, generally we provide a COVID report. Sometimes it's been longer than my arm, and sometimes it's been relatively short due to the time that you have spent already, over an hour and a half. Let me be really short. One of the major items that we have coming up for the City Council to review and evaluate is based on a recommendation that was provided by the Economic Development Authority. We anticipate that that information will come to the City Council at its first regular meeting in November, and so this would be the conversion of your micro loan program, your COVID micro loan program, into a grant program. So we reviewed that at a meeting not too long ago, and so we anticipate that coming to you at your first regular meeting in November. Other than that, I'd stand for questions on COVID-19 issues that impact the city and its operation and what we're doing in buildings. But again, I'd offer to try and keep the meeting short. We still have a couple of closed sessions that I'm asking you to provide a resolution on yet at this meeting.
Okay. Questions for Todd on this or any other thing that you may have? All right. Todd, you had nothing else until we go to the closed session?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'm going to ask if the council, does anyone have anything they would like to share? All right, I see no one. We will, therefore, we have a executive session, we have a resolution for a closed session, executive closed session, for potential land sale at 1830 Freeman Drive and also for a utility union contract negotiation. We will not be coming back to take any action after the closed session. The only thing we will do is return to open session and adjourn. So, with that, the resolution calling for closed session appears on page 148. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel will move.
I didn't hear the first one. Who was that?
Shannon.
Okay, Shannon 1, Ed 2. All in favor of the closing the for the calling for the closed session, please. Excuse me, I'm stepping ahead. Barb, please call the roll.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie
Resolution is approved. We will now recess, go into the closed session, as I said before, and we will adjourn from there after discussing these two items. We will not make any
CSL.
decisions. So, for those of you that need to leave us at this point.